everybody, welcome to the Fired Up with CJ show. Today we're going to be talking about Shakti Rising. Who is Shakti? How can we uh, work with her in our lives? And we have Kavitha Chinnaiyan, who is here, the author of this book, telling us all about Shakti. So welcome.
Thank you.
So who is Shakti for people who are not familiar, and what tradition is a part of?
Well, so Shakti is the divine feminine in many different paths, and um, and so I want to back up a little bit,
Sure.
and just to make it kind of more relevant and clear, is one of the things that we start thinking about, particularly when we talk about non-duality, is that the divine really has no gender. And
Mm-hmm.
this is true. And there is no such attribute of the divine.
Mm-hmm.
However, this whole thing of the divine masculine and the feminine, these are things for us to understand how, the whole works, or the
Mm-hmm.
divine as a whole works. So, in the tantric tradition, in one particular tantric tradition, which is from Hindu Tantra, um, the divine before manifestation, before creation, exists as a potential.
Mm-hmm.
So this is before time and space.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no movement, and it's just pure potential.
Mm-hmm.
And the first movement within this potential is one of self-recognition or self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we call that, in a very romantic way, of this process of self-recognition, as Shiva looking at himself,
Mm-hmm.
and that self-awareness, or that self-awareness of Shiva, or his I am, is Shakti. So it's if we say that they are separate, they're not. They're like, water and wetness. You can't separate them. It's like fire and heat, and so on. So Shiva and Shakti are always one. But the way we kind of understand various concepts on our spiritual journey is by um, looking at their seeming separation.
Mm-hmm.
And Shakti is this creative energy of the divine.
Mm.
So everything that we see in manifestation is a form of Shakti,
Mm-hmm.
because Tantra tells us that Shiva himself has no attributes. So if you look at pictures of Shiva, he is translucent, colorless, and so he's the formless.
Mm.
And what gives him form, and including all of the creative potencies and the movement and the dynamism, is Shakti.
Mm. Okay, so to dissect this a little bit, and I find we had talked a little bit yesterday about the study and even how you've been studying Tantra, is that you are looking at Shaivism, and which has a focus on Shiva. Is that right? And then there's the body of work that you tell me again the name of the. It's called the Mahavita. Is that right?
The Mahavidyas are part of a tradition of Shakta philosophy.
Okay,
Uh,
Shakta. Okay, so
yeah,
that's the
yeah,
female and the male, and then you also look at non-dual, which is
yes,
that non-dual for folks who are not familiar with these terms. Non-dual is where there's not a you or me. We're all one. Everything is connected. So you look at both that, and then you look at the constituent parts of
yes,
that, right? And so
yes.
that's
But
what you're studying.
even in Shaivism, Shiva is always considered to be um, always with Shakti, and so
Right.
so too in Shaktism, Shakti is always with
Right.
Shiva.
They're
So
inseparable.
they're inseparable.
Right,
Yes.
but they are denoted differently because one is more Shakti is more about creation. You're saying it kind of has a different quality to it than it's what they
Yes.
need each other. They're interdependent. One cannot exist without the other.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
So we call it feminine because, our human mind tends to think of everything from the standpoint of the human.
Mm-hmm.
So in most of the species that we know on this planet, it's the female that gives birth. So she has the creative potency. And so we call this a divine feminine
Ah,
because of
okay.
this creative potency. Um, and but in reality, they're never separate.
Mm-hmm. Now the Mahavidyas, did I pronounce that correctly?
Mahavidyas.
Mahavidyas, they have
Yeah.
10 wisdom goddesses, and how do they fit within that form of Tantra? It's called Shakta Tantra.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So they, my path has been very, very much in the Sri Vidya tradition, and which is a goddess path.
Mm-hmm.
And the Mahavidyas are a sequence or a group of 10 goddesses. They're all Shakti, they're all different forms of Shakti, but they are
Mm,
all specific forms of Shakti that denote specific forces or energies of creation, like
okay, got it.
time and space and various other forces of creation.
Okay, got it. Okay, got it. So that's the form that you study, and I'm wondering. So, it seems in your book there's a very kind of practical application where you're drawing upon goddesses, and I know a lot of Hindu. There's a lot of deity worship. Is that also part of the is it called
Yeah, of the
Shaktism?
Shakti path. Yeah,
Shakti path. Is it
yeah.
also part of the Shakti path? And how do you use these goddesses in your day in, day out life?
Yeah, so there are many, many different ways to worship these goddesses. Traditionally, yes, there's a lot of worship in very esoteric and ritualistic ways, and in Tantra, it's common to use mantra or sacred sounds
Mm,
and sacred forms or yantras, the geometric forms of each of these deities, and do specific forms of worship and rituals to invoke them.
mm-hmm.
And that is something that is, that's very traditional. That's been done for centuries, and it's still in vogue, and it's still there, very much alive, that tradition, and it's absolutely beautiful. But what I was trying to do in this book is to make these goddesses more practical, where you may not be doing those rituals and you may not be called to do those kinds of rituals or not be familiar with them. But yet, because they're universal, cosmic, creative energies, they're available to each of us in
Mm-hmm.
whatever tradition we may be
Mm-hmm.
studying in, and whatever path we may be in. You can't escape them because they are universal.
Right. Whether
So,
you're male or female, too, right? This is
exactly.
not just like these are only creation. It's just that was the way that we had to.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
got it.
But so males are also part of Shakti because she is everything in creation. There is
Mm-hmm.
nothing that's not Shakti.
Right.
So she is everything.
Right. Okay. So tell me a little bit about your day in, day out life with these goddesses, and how do you invoke the goddesses, or how do they play in your own life?
Yeah, so because I my path is the Sri Vidya tradition, and I do also I love the non-dual inquiry of the direct path, and so for me these goddesses are very alive in how they present in day-to-day life, in my own interactions, in my own psyche, in the way I think, in the way I feel, in the way my body feels, in the way the world is. There is nothing that I can't correlate with one of
Mm,
goddesses because they are very much alive,
mm-hmm.
in as both the shadow and the light of every aspect of duality that is contained within non-duality.
Okay, so I'm gonna so I when I was reading through the book, there are two that I was drawn to, and I
Yeah.
think they may be the ones that are the most unappealing physically, but I'm drawn to them.
Oh yes, Dhumavati.
Dhumavati is the one
Yes.
that, and so if for folks who are listening on the radio, there's a picture of a woman who's this wise crone, and she's somewhat emaciated, very wrinkled. She is, and there's a description. So She's uncouth and dirty. Her skin has a smoky hue, the color of dark void that she represents. She's wearing a filthy widow's robe, no jewelry. She rides in a horseless cart. In one hand she holds a winnow that sorts grain from chaff, while the other forms a mudra that bestows blessings. So this is this woman, Drumavati, is that what you said? Okay,
Dhumavati, yeah.
Dhumavati. Okay, so
Yes.
in each of these chapters, you talk a little bit about the description and the symbolism, and you were mentioning before that all these goddesses have a role in creation. So, what is Dhumavati's role in creation?
Yeah. So, so before I answer that question,
Hmm.
I just want to speak a little bit about the the uniqueness of the Mahavidyas,
Okay.
and because this is going to be relevant to
Right. Yeah.
Dhumavati,
Yeah.
especially, but also all the other nine is. So if you think of a goddess,
Hmm.
and if just think about, the word goddess,
Hmm.
what comes to mind?
Yeah, a voluptuous woman, kind of scantily clothed and, like abundant
Yes,
in every
yeah,
way.
and extremely beautiful, and has all these powers. She's a wonderful mother, simultaneously a wonderful lover, and she's exquisitely beautiful, and so on.
Right.
But so let me ask you this question: who do you think defines the goddess?
Men, probably.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely, right. And so we are entrapped. Even the goddess doesn't escape patriarchy.
Hmm.
Even the image of the goddess doesn't escape this kind of a patriarchal system that we have in place.
Hmm.
But the Mahavidyas actually don't conform to any of that. As you can
Mm.
see, all 10 of them,
Right.
they are completely unconventional,
Right.
because what we want to know from the Mahavidyas is that the goddess, or the divine, doesn't look one particular way,
Mm.
doesn't appear in one particular way.
Hmm.
That we have to be able to find the divine in the trash,
Hmm.
in the marsh, in filth, in because she's everywhere. There is
Right.
nothing that escapes the divine.
Right.
So Dhumavati is, the archetype of the Mahavidyas, in how unconventional she is.
Hmm.
Because anything you can think about the goddess, she's the opposite of that.
Right. This is not the goddess that most people think about, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And actually she's one of my favorites,
Oh, okay.
because yeah, and because there is, her symbolism is so magnificent that it's really deep. And so Dhumavati actually represents the void, and the void is, remember in the beginning I was saying, before creation there is just this potential. And so what we can experience in our sadhana, in our spiritual journey, is, all of us will eventually come to this point where we kind of fall off the cliff into the void,
Hmm.
where there is nothing,
Hmm.
and that usually happens when the ego, or in here, what we're calling the ego, is this identification as the person, as
Hmm.
this body and the mind. And
Hmm.
in the book, I call that the I self.
Hmm.
This whole story we create about who we are.
Hmm.
Um, when that is kind of removed, and through our sadhana, that just goes away. And so the identification that we had held on to, the stories that we had held on to, they kind of disappear. And so we kind of fall off into this void where, you know, we haven't come to a full, joyous, ecstatic realization of our true nature yet, but the ego is gone.
Hmm.
So usually that's called the dark night of the soul,
Hmm.
where
Hmm.
where a very tight identification is suddenly taken away.
Hmm.
And so that void is represented by Dhumavati, because in that void there is nothing.
Hmm.
She has even swallowed Shiva, which is why, she is a widow,
Hmm.
because that's
Oh,
the,
wow.
yeah. So there is nothing. There is just her,
Right.
which is void, this great void.
Yeah.
Um, but this void is not really something that we are unfamiliar with. Each of us is familiar with it because we experience that every single night when we go to sleep.
And you're
And
referring to like how is Dhumavati's present in our body? Because each one of these we have an experiential felt sense or an
yeah,
experience of these goddesses.
yes,
So Dhumavati comes with us when we're sleeping.
yes, as this deep sleep,
Hmm.
in dreaming. So in waking and dreaming states, there is still a me and there is an experience.
Hmm.
Right, in the waking state, of course, there's a me and there's all this experience
Right.
going on. um, and but in deep sleep, in when the dreaming phase ends and the dreamless sleep state begins, the subject and the object merge,
Hmm.
which is why there is no experience of deep sleep as it's happening. We
Hmm.
can only infer to it after we wake up and say, oh, I there was a period of time where there was nothing,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Because when it's going on, we
Mm.
can't really experience it because the subject and the object have become one. And the
Mm-hmm.
only way to experience something is when they are separate.
Yeah, and I'll just add a little story that I had. I'm not sure why, but about 8 years ago, I would go to sleep, and in that sleep, I would pop up into this place that was completely, utterly black, and I was like, "Where am I?" Like, and then I'd go to look for my hands, and my hands didn't exist, and then I'd
Wow.
go and look to see if anyone else existed, and they didn't exist. It was
Yeah.
just blackness, darkness. Even my thought, I'm like, where is this thought coming from?
Yeah.
Like I could
Yeah.
only hear the thoughts in my head, and I had no body associated with it, nothing. It was just nothingness. And I was terrified because I had
Yeah.
never experienced anything like that. But I think it's as close as my experiential understanding of the void. And it's kind of terrifying because you're
It
neither
is.
here nor there. You don't even
Yeah.
exist. And a girlfriend of mine said, well, why didn't you just like lean into the spaciousness? And I was like, God, I wish I had the insight
Yeah.
to do that. But
Yeah.
it's scary to be in
It
this
is.
nothingness place because you don't exist, the I doesn't exist, nothing
Yeah.
exists.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. That is Dhumavati.
yes.
No wonder you're attracted to that because you know that.
I've been there, and then finally, I mean, it would freak me out. I'd actually not want to go to sleep because I
Yeah.
would pop into that state for about 2 weeks. I would just pop into that state, pop into that state, pop. Like anytime I close my eyes and go to sleep, I would
Yeah.
just go there, and I don't know why I went there, but I went there.
Yeah.
The reason why this resonated with me is, well, there have been two times in my life where I've experienced a sort of I death, like a sense of me
Hmm.
dying. One was when my
Yeah.
dad died, and
Hmm.
that just shifted my whole, and he died of a heart attack very suddenly. So that when that happened, I was just in this groundless kind of like I don't even know what kind of state. I just didn't know where I was going, what I was doing. Like I was trying to focus on work and get stuff done, but I was very lost and confused and kind of in nothing space.
Yeah.
And then just recently, when my son left for college, I got on the plane and was just, I like literally was dizzy. Like my whole world was spinning around because I was so
Yeah.
dizzy. But I would say the goddess that I can relate to most is Dhumavati because I think that
Yes.
that's a space. So
Yes.
tell me about the dark night of the soul and how she's related to the dark night of the soul.
Yeah. So, the dark night of the soul is a very interesting phenomenon that pretty much all of us will go through on
Mm-hmm.
this inner journey. And that is this sudden loss of identification with whatever it is that we've been identifying with.
Mm,
And it can be a child, as you're saying, and a parent too. And that loss of well, whatever, if I'm identifying as mom,
right,
and and that suddenly I'm not needed.
right.
And so, this is not to say that only spiritual aspirants will experience this. This is
Oh,
common in daily
yeah.
life,
Well, even when
right?
you get married, this happens. When you
Oh yeah.
have kids, it happens. It's a sense
Yes.
of like not knowing who you are at
Correct.
that point.
Yeah. And so, I see a lot of this when people, especially men, lose their jobs.
Mm,
And it can be like death for them,
hmm.
this loss of identification, because so much of their identity was rested in
Job,
that
right.
being being a worker. So, but here, in terms of the spiritual journey, Dhumavati specifically refers to the loss of the ego that occurs, and after which it's almost impossible to come back and be identified with the body. It's
Mm,
impossible. So this is something that's a permanent, that rite of passage where you go through that, where it's almost impossible to come back and be identified
right. You'll
as the,
never be the same person again.
you'll never be the same again. Yeah.
Okay, so you talk about the shadow. So the key in Dhamavati shadow is ignorance, and
Yeah.
so what does that mean? How is the ignorance related to this?
Yeah. So here we are, when we are talking about ignorance, we are referring to ignorance of our true nature.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So our true nature is that we are Shakti and we are Shiva, in the two of them together, right? So we are divine and we are not limited. So our nature is one of eternal bliss consciousness, undying, eternal bliss consciousness. That is really who we are. But ignorance is taking ourselves to be this person with this body, with this mind, and
With
with
this
this
job, with
story.
this, yeah, all
This
the things.
story, yeah.
Yes.
So
Ah,
identifying as this limited person is ignorance.
ah, okay, got it.
And that is Dhumavati's shadow.
Ah,
And you
okay.
can see that in her symbolism. She holds the winnow, where the grain and the chaff are kind of mixed up, and we uh, we create a duality. When she separates the grain from the chaff, it's like we become a separate person and the experience becomes a separate thing. Whereas non-duality teaches us, and Dhumavati teaches us, when we fall off into the void, that actually there's no separation between
Mm,
experience and me. There is no separation. There is no two, but there isn't even one, because one
nothing
means that
exists.
nothing is there. Yes, yeah.
Okay, got it. So the part of us that wants to, so the desire to possess knowledge versus knowing, so your self knowledge is knowing of one's true nature. So so in this case, it's about understanding that I am both
Yeah,
Shakta and Shiva. That's the
yeah.
okay. So that
And I think there is a subtle distinction there,
mm,
because you and I are students of various paths,
mm-hmm,
right? So we study all these different texts, and you know both of us could probably write dissertations on what the true self is,
mm-hmm,
right? And that is knowledge about the self.
mm-hmm.
So you see, it's not knowledge as becoming the self or resting as the self. It is
Right.
knowledge about the self. So there is a subtle
Right.
distinction
One
there.
is like a knowledge that I can read in a book about
Yes,
myself. And the
yes,
other is like, no, I know who I am. I feel it
right.
at an experiential inside of myself.
Exactly, exactly.
Ah, okay, got it. So that's basically Dhumavati helps us kind of go into. I guess here's how I understand the narrative. I go into a nothingness state, and then I go, "What am I?" And the answer is, "You're nothing." And then it's like, well, what about my job and my fancy car and my dad or my son? Like, aren't those who I am? And it's like, no, you are not those things. It's like,
Right.
well, then who am I if I'm not the car and the position and the title and all those
Yeah,
things? So
yeah,
this is kind of what she reveals is our
yeah,
shadows of like, why was I thinking all those things were me anyways?
yes,
So I need to
yeah,
have like the rug pulled from underneath me so I can
yeah,
finally recognize, like, you get it now? These
yeah.
things are nothing.
So, the thing is, and you can probably relate to this, is I think the mistake that we make is we try to become everything without first becoming nothing.
Mm,
So, in order to become everything and to understand oneness with everything, we first need to become nothing,
mm-hmm.
to realize that we're nothing. Only in that nothingness can that everythingness reveal itself. But if you try to go into everythingness first without really a stable foundation in nothingness, in Dhumavati, then we kind of get caught in the mind, and in the objects of the world, in our experience. Uh, but what she does is she pulls us into this nothingness and gives us a taste of really, as you said, no, none of this,
Right.
not this, not this, not this, not this, and and so when we completely realize not this, not this, and begin to rest in that, we come to see that wait, my experience is not separate from me.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm seeing here isn't separate from me. What I'm hearing isn't separate from me. It's all me. That
Mm.
object is me. This object is me. This experience is me. Everything is me.
Right. If I'm
Nothing
nothing, I'm
exists.
everything. If like you're
Exactly.
saying, like if I realize
Yeah.
I'm nothing, then I must be everything because.
Yes. Yeah. And it's not one of deduction. It's one of like actual experience of
Mm-hmm.
knowing that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what Dhumavati shows us.
She's very deep, isn't she? All right.
Yeah.
So tell me about the grantees. So as I understand, grantees are like little tension or contraction points that are either felt emotionally, physically, in our mind. And so how is Dhumavati's role helping us? Like when we see nothing, it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, if these things don't, is that how they're related to grantees?
So the granthis, are these energetic kind of, granthi literally means knot.
Not, right?
So yeah, so these are like, energetic kind of knots at specific places in the subtle body which determine where our identity lies. Okay,
Mm,
so there are three granthis, and they are named after the creator and the sustainer and the destroyer. So Brahma, Vishnu, and Rudra Granthi.
mm-hmm,
So the Brahma Granthi is um, at the base.
mm-hmm,
So that includes, you know, whatever our identity is of survival and of needing to be validated and so
mm,
on. So if that's where our identity lies, that's a Brahma Granthi issue.
mm,
And the Vishnu Granthi is more in the heart region where we define ourselves by our relationships.
mm,
It's like I'm a wife, I'm a mother, but always in relation to somebody else, something else.
mm-hmm,
And so that's where our limitations lie.
mm-hmm,
And the Rudra Granthi is actually, this fundamental ignorance,
mm-hmm,
which lies at the third eye level,
mm-hmm.
and that comes from lack of discrimination or discernment between what is real, which is our true nature, and
Mm-hmm.
what is unreal, which is attachment to all kinds of things around us and taking ourselves to be our stories.
Okay.
So those are the three granthis, and the Brahma Granthi is the one that creates this kind of shadow of taking ourselves to be the person. The
Mm,
Vishnu Granthi creates, sustains it by continuing, whatever survival kind of issues we have, those kind of become attached to our relationships. I can't
mm,
live without so and so. I need so and so to survive. So you know how that I self is surviving and sustaining or being sustained by this Vishnu Granthi.
okay.
And the Rudra Granthi is, we don't even get there until we solve those issues.
Okay.
And then we get there and we realize, well, I am not all of that, but there is still a fundamental, well, I am the body and I am limited or I'm lacking in some way. And
Okay. So is it
yeah,
related to Dhumavati in the sense that, like, well, you're nothing, so none of these things
yes,
really exist.
yes,
So she
yes,
kind of helps us realize that, yeah, I know you feel like you have all these knots and everything, but like
yeah.
they aren't even real.
Yes.
Okay, I get it. Interesting. Wow, she's a very complicated one, I think, for most
She
people to
is, but
understand.
the way I've written this book is for these goddesses to be sequential and
Yes.
to work with them one after the other. So by the time you get to Dhumavati, you've worked with all the other issues. So this becomes more intuitive.
Right, yeah, it's more progressive than just kind of like, oh, let's talk about Dhumavati. I'm probably not like your typical interviewer of such. Okay, so there's the light side. So what I like about this is that with all of the archetypes, with and in this case, the goddesses, they have a dark, which we had talked about, like
Yeah.
nothingness and revealing our sense of grasping onto identifying
Yes.
tensions in our body, who we are, all those types of things. But then there's a light side too. So what's the light side of Dhumavati?
It's the opposite of the shadow. Her shadow is ignorance. So her light is self-knowledge.
Mm.
So discovering who we really are. And
Ah,
that is the greatest gift. So you see why she's my favorite.
yes.
And it's because she gives this incredible boon of, self-realization, of
Mm.
self-discovery, and seeing that none of this is true in the sense that we make it to be, and
Mm-hmm.
that who we are is cannot be destroyed.
Mm-hmm. So it's self-reflection, which very few of us do in this modern
Yes.
age, because it
Yeah.
requires you to, you say the art of doing nothing, which is very
Yes.
hard for us to do.
Yeah.
So what is for people who don't even know the art of doing nothing? I mean, I honestly think it's a rare concept right now.
Yes.
I just had lunch with a friend, and he said, "Oh yeah, I've just been like, I have these little gaps of time, and then I'm like, oh yay, I get some free time to do my stuff, and then like they evaporate, and like I'm running on this treadmill again." And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, like you have to make the time, because if you
Yes.
don't make the time, it
Yes.
doesn't just arrive out of
Yes.
nowhere. So, what
Yeah.
is this art of doing nothing, and what would it look like if we were to avail ourselves to Dhumavati's grace?
So, everything on this path, on the spiritual journey, is a paradox. Uh, so when we say do nothing, it doesn't mean we just sit in a chair and do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It's do nothing internally, even while you're absolutely active on the external
Mm,
surface
mm-hmm,
level.
mm-hmm,
So you can be working and doing all this. So when we are saying do nothing, it's really has to do with the shadows of the previous Mahavidyas. It's like stop
mm,
justifying, stop creating more internal noise within yourself, stop trying to distract yourself. So, a lot of times what happens is when there's an uncomfortable feeling that comes up, right? So we have anxiety or anger or whatever. Now we have learned, on our spiritual journey, you're not supposed to be angry, but here it's coming up,
right. What
right?
am I supposed to do? I'm
So
angry. So
yeah,
just
what am
eat a
I
bag of
supposed to
Cheetos.
do? Yeah. So you would do that if you're not really thinking about your spiritual journey. But when we come to the spiritual journey, we are given, say, a mantra or a technique, right? And say, and we are taught that when these things happen, you turn to that technique,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we are constantly doing, right? Even in that internally, we're constantly
Oh,
like
I need to do the
moving
mantra.
away,
Right.
yeah, moving away from what is
Hmm.
into distraction,
Mm-hmm.
into diversion, into whatever it is. So doing nothing is to see what happens if you're absolutely still inside and you see that every experience, every emotion, every thought, every energetic kind of upheaval is temporary.
Mm-hmm.
It's impermanent. It comes and goes, right? And when we open to that completely and do nothing, no, don't justify it with mind. Don't justify it with technique. Don't justify it with, oh, it's okay, I'm supposed to feel like this or whatever. Just stop all that, the justifying, the validating, the internal noise, and just allow it to be. Then you can ride that wave, of seeing what really the anxiety is like. Because
Mm.
most of us don't even know what that is,
Yeah.
We don't even know what anxiety or anger, the energy of it, we don't even allow it to occur.
Mm-hmm.
So it's only when we allow it that we realize, wait, I'm still here. This has come and gone. So then I'm not that. So, when you say I'm anxious or I'm angry, we are becoming identified with that. But here we can say anger comes and goes, anxiety comes and goes, but I'm not that.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't realize that if we are constantly doing.
Yeah, I had a recent experience with this because I forgot to sign up my son for a summer program. And
Uh-huh.
then I got on the wait list, and it's a program he really wanted, and I knew he really wanted, but I missed signing up for 2 days. Like I was 2 days past the
Yeah.
deadline, so I'm now on the wait list. Sorry, I wasn't clear. So now I'm on the wait list, and I said, well, I might as well send an email just saying like, hey, it's his junior year. We really would like to do this. We haven't been, layering all the guilt, like with a big, like peanut butter on a piece of toast. He hasn't done anything. Oh, poor me. Please let us, please. And then I was like, I hope you're not going to penalize us because, and then I got a mail, a very kind of terse mail back from the school saying like, listen, we're going to be going through this process, and it's kind of like, we're going to fit you into the process. I got one of
Oh.
those nails, and I was like, then I wrote back saying, I hope you don't unduly punish us because of a mistake that I made, or like punish us because, as you can see by the variety of emails below, I've been asking about this summer program for a while.
Yeah.
And then she wrote back this other, like, it started getting snippy back.
Yeah.
And then I just felt like reaming her. I'm like, well, I'm not going to give a donation to this school. So I started going down that path. And then I thought, what are you doing? And I just thought, wow, I wonder what would have happened if you did nothing. Was it good to do something, or was it better to do nothing? And why are you getting mad at this woman for something that was really your own fault, honestly? You're projecting your anger at yourself onto this woman. That's not
Yeah.
really fair. So
Yeah.
I could tell that she was getting snippish from my remarks, which I mean are justifiable because they came in with like a ladle of guilt and then like a ladle of guilt and like threats, I totally get why they came across. But I thought, well, if I had done nothing, how would this have been different if I had just let things play the course? So what if he doesn't go to this summer thing? Is it the end of the world? Probably not. There's probably some reason beyond what I can really understand if he doesn't go to this. So what if I
Yeah.
just went to the just do nothing? So I learned from my lesson earlier in the week. So today, someone is like, hey, I'd like to hire you for a workshop. And if I get a workshop in this one big company, it probably will mean I'll get lots of other workshops. So the part of me that's ambitious is like, I got to go and get that, And then I was like, no, you don't have to go get anything. I was like, because after the meeting, I thought I'm going to send him my resume because I'm like kind of the perfect person to do this training. And I'm going to say, and I was like, or you can learn from your previous mistake earlier this week and do nothing. Let everything just stay the course. Don't send a resume. Don't follow up. Just let everything be. He knows that you're interested. He knows that I know that he's interested, and just and when there's an internal thing that says, yes, it's time to connect with him, maybe follow that. But at this point, the part that wants to do and like move forward and aggressively pursue it, it's like, yeah, maybe not. Maybe be in the unknown. You may or may not get that. If you don't get that workshop in the series, a big gig, then it's not going to happen. And
Yeah.
just let it be. And it's funny. It's something that it's a brand new thing for me to do. So I don't really know exactly how to do it well, but I have been practicing this
Yeah.
process. Yeah.
Yeah. So, uh, the art of doing nothing is very, very interesting because um, it's about, people think, well, if I don't do anything, how will anything get done?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I need to be on it.
yeah, you need to be on it. And so this isn't really about not doing what we are supposed to be doing. It's really not about that.
Mm-hmm.
It's about being completely engaged with the action, whatever it is that we are doing, and taking the right action. But what it lacks is that mental noise. So that's what it lacks. There is no justifying it. You just do it because that's what you need to do.
Right.
And whether that means sending an email or going to a march, or going somewhere else, or speaking up about something, we don't stop doing those things. But what it lacks is this internal conflict. That's gone. So that's where we are talking about doing nothing, because it's not like constantly justifying and say, maybe I should do this, maybe I shouldn't do this. Even that is gone.
Right.
So that
you're just doing it.
You're doing it, but you're not really doing it, because there is no identification as I'm the one doing it.
Right.
The action is happening through you, but you're not the one doing it.
Right.
So you're allowing the divine to work through you.
Right.
And so that constant mental activity that drives our action, that is laid to rest.
Right.
With doing,
like the thing that I was doing, if I were to describe myself in the fashion, kind of critical fashion, I mean, I was basically trying to push and control the outcome.
Right.
Yes. I had what came up naturally is, hey, there's this opportunity to do these workshops. I'm like, well, I would like to be considered.
Yes.
That kind of came up naturally. I didn't think about it. I wasn't thinking about how I could say that it just kind of boom came out of my mouth. Beyond that, there's nothing more for me to do. It just has things just have to play their course, and I have to be in the black unknownness of what's going to happen next. I don't know what's going to happen, and it's not going to be about my identity, whatever. It's like
yes.
But it's I'm definitely. I'm recognizing, and you can read 1,000 Taoist books and like do nothing.
Right.
But until you get into this place of finally experiencing in a hard time, right? Like I would like to get that gig.
Yes.
It would fill up my whole next, year of full of business. But like, I'm like, well, if it's meant to be, you'll get it. And if it doesn't, you won't get it. So you pushing and that's not going to make a difference. So just let it go. It's so hard to do.
It is.
Hard to do. Okay, so how do we, and I think the other point that you bring in here is, and I've seen this happen to other people on a spiritual path, is they start watching their mind. When you get to the point of self-reflection, to the point that you're so mindful of your daily thoughts and the futility of, I'm trying to go control this. Like in my case, how futile that whole kind of ridiculous scenario is. You start seeing how ridiculous everything is, and how everything is an illusion that is created by your own thinking mind and everything.
Absolutely.
That you reach to a point of nihilism, which I thought, I hadn't read in a lot of books, but I thought that is exactly what happens, because you feel rudderless, like nothing, all this is so trivial and unimportant. So how do we unite this so that we don't go into the almost like despondent part of Dhumavati, but unite the dark and the light?
Yeah, the thing of this part of the sadhana, especially with Dhumavati, is there is nothing we can do. We just surrender to her and just allow her to take us through the darkness back into the light, because she's the one that does that. She shows us that efforting is not the way to self-realization. So, that is really Dhumavati's greatest gift, is showing us that there is nothing we can do, and there is nothing to do. There is nothing we can do to unite the shadow and the light. We just let it go and say, okay, Mother, do whatever you want with me. And
so it's really just complete surrender.
Absolute surrender. Because
I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it will happen. And the weird thing is the two opportunities that came up, they just came out of the blue. because
Yeah.
I've just been doing this meditation. It's this non-dual meditation where you're like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm resting my whole
Mm-hmm.
energy into the unknown, and
Yes.
that's where I'm going to rest. And whatever comes, I'll respond to. But I'm
Yeah.
not going to create a crate business. It will just happen. And then,
Yes.
and then, literally right after this meditation that I've been doing over the last couple of weeks, things have been rolling in. I got an email from someone saying, "We'd like you to teach a workshop in March," and
Yeah.
then a series of other things and do a mediation. And then someone else came and said, "Would you like to do a mindfulness program for this, government department?" And like just stuff came out of nowhere that I was not out there seeking. It just
Yeah.
came in. So I, it's when things like that happen, as well as this one that just happened with a client that it's like, "Oh, I
Yeah.
think we'd like you to train this whole, division." And I was like, what the hey? Like, it's not like, when you surrender into saying, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And she teaches that really
Dhumavati,
well.
just please do it for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know my skills, you know what I'm
Yeah.
here to do on earth. Just bring me where I can be of service, and that's
Yeah.
all I can
And
ask.
that is, it's really interesting because it's not just unique to Dhumavati. It's
Hmm.
Shakti in general. Any kind of surrender on any path. You don't have to believe in the goddess. That's that part of surrendering and letting life lead through, because life is Shakti.
Hmm.
And so that is really Shakti's gift on any path, whether or not you think it's the goddess path. That
Hmm.
surrender is giving up control. The effort, that the journey from the head to the heart is the longest journey. It's the longest
Yes, for
journey.
sure.
Yeah. So she facilitates that.
Yeah, nice, beautiful. So I know we have about 4 minutes left. Is there a quick uh, you have an exercise of moving from your shadow to light. Do you think you could step us through what that would look like?
You mean for Dhumavati?
Yeah, it's on page
Yeah.
155 of your book.
Yeah. 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 So the exercise there is to really peel away the layers of who we think we are until we are standing with none of those stories. You know, so the way that we would proceed in this practice is we would ask the question, "Who am I?" And just be very honest with that answer.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever comes up, not what we have learned, what we must be, but really who we really feel that we are.
Mm-hmm.
I am so and so. I'm so and so. I'm so and so. And then you basically see the stories that are associated with that, and then layer by layer you say, okay, I'm not that, so who am I?
Mm-hmm.
And then, so I'm not that, so who am I? If those stories are gone, what am I? And so one thing that might help is not ask who am I, because that who kind of implies a person.
Mm-hmm.
So I recommend using what am I,
Mm.
and so this is a very common practice in Advaita Vedanta and
Mm-hmm.
many other non-dual traditions, where you just sit with the thought, what am I?
Mm-hmm.
And and that what am I can sometimes be facilitated by trying to find where am I. And this is a game that I like to play with my kids sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
is say, where are you? So where
Do,
can I find you?
okay, got it. So do you want me to pretend I'm your kid?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Okay.
or anybody. Actually,
Okay,
I
got it.
even
Yeah.
do
Okay. So
this in my work,
I'm Seattle.
where you're in Seattle,
Mm-hmm.
but where in your body are you?
I'm in my third eye and my throat chakra.
So if I cut open that area, will I find you?
No.
So where in your body are you? Is there one part of your body where I can find CJ?
No.
In your liver, in your spleen, in your heart muscle,
No.
in your brain? No.
No.
Okay, so you're not in your body.
Right. I
Okay,
don't think
so
so. I mean, I think I'm everywhere in my body, therefore there's not just one place.
but is that true though? Because if I cut you open, I won't find you there.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah.
So where are you then?
I'm like a spirit floating over,
A spirit floating over.
floating over the body below. Because you've
So
cut me open and I can't. It's so painful that I've floated above as an ether, like the air.
so so we we don't, most of us don't think that we are just the body.
Hmm.
We think we are this thing that drives the body,
Hmm.
right? The mind, that we are the chooser, the doer,
Hmm.
right? So if you say you're in your mind, I'm going to ask you, where is that?
Hmm.
Where in your mind can I find you?
Right, my brain. I'm in my brain.
Well, you're not in your brain. That's the body, right?
Okay.
Now we're talking about the mind,
Okay.
which we know is not doesn't correlate that well with the brain, as in I can't find your mind in your brain.
Right.
So where in your mind can I find you? Because then we have to talk about what the mind is, which
Hmm.
is, you know, thoughts, right? And then we have feelings, and we have, the energetic sensations, perhaps.
Hmm.
So, are you your thoughts?
No.
No, because thoughts come and go.
Right.
Are you your emotions?
No, because they also come and go.
They also come and go. Are you energetic sensations?
No, they also come. All those things are impermanent.
Right. So now you have the chooser and the doer, right? So once you make a choice, now you just lifted up your cup to have a sip of
Hmm.
your beverage, you made the choice. Once you put it back, was the chooser still there?
I would like to think that they're there, but I assume that I'm not even sure what chose to do that. What part of me
Right,
chose to do that?
right, exactly. So the chooser also comes and goes.
Right.
Once you have spoken something, you say, well, I spoke that. But while you're speaking, is there a speaker?
No, I mean it's like it's literally something going through me when I
Right.
talk. It's shocking what comes through my mouth. It's often not me. If it is me, it's
So
terrifying.
so we've determined that none of those are you, right? Because
Mhm.
they all come and go,
Mhm.
right? So, but there is still you. You're
Mhm.
still here,
Mhm.
right? So once we remove the body from you, we remove the various elements of the mind from you, and you're still here. What are you?
I just think of presence.
That's it, right? It's
Mhm.
that I amness, that aliveness. But
Mhm.
it's not I am CJ, I am Kavitha.
Mhm.
Not that.
Mhm.
I am. I just
Mhm.
am, right?
Mhm.
The presence, as you're saying,
Mhm.
being, or
Mhm.
the self. So that is the exercise that really, peels away all these different layers of what we think we are, and where we suddenly stand without the support of any of that and see that I am.
Mm.
And
Right.
nothing comes after that. You
Right.
say, what am I? No, nothing comes out.
Right.
As long as something is still coming out, those are all the layers.
Ah, I see. Got it. I got it.
Yeah.
So Dhumavati and this type of meditation, which is a progressive meditation, is what you would call it, right?
Yes, yeah, yes.
Right. Is actually one in which you're kind of progressively taking out the layers so that I
Correct.
can reveal more and more what
Yes.
what is not real.
Yes.
Got it.
Exactly.
Got it.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Okay, so we've only talked about one goddess. There are nine others. We've been talking to Kavitha Chinnaiyan, and we've been talking about her book, Shakti Rising. And there are nine other goddesses that you can also read about. And it's a very similar, and I kind of jumped all the way to the end at the very end of this. But 9 other goddesses, of which you talk about the symbolism of those goddesses. You talk about how they relate to creation. You talk about how they relate to your I self. You talk
Yes.
about the light side and the dark side, and each of them has 2 different beautiful types of meditations at the end to do. So it's
Yeah.
you could probably use this book over a course of a year, honestly, and then
Yes.
use it. I could see using it whenever something comes up. Like for me, I just kind of intuitively looked and I thought, okay, these are the ones that I really want. And
Yeah.
Shakti was one of Kali was one, and
Yes.
Dhumavati was the other one that kind of like just jumped out on a page. Like, yep, these are the ones that resonate
Yeah.
with me for whatever reason. Maybe at this juncture, or who knows. Um,
Yeah.
so,
So I'll be I'll I'm creating a course, a study
oh,
course.
cool. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, a 12-week online study course that's going to begin sometime in January or February.
Oh,
Uh,
great.
so it's going to include these kind of very in-depth explorations of the goddesses, much more than in the book.
Yeah. Oh, good. Excellent. So you're going to be doing that, and folks can go to your website. Tell us your website again.
KavithaMD.com.
Right. So let's see. I'm going to put right there. So kavithamd.com.
Yes,
Excellent. Okay. So that they can sign up for your class, and it starts the sign-ups will begin in
in January or
January.
February.
Okay.
End of
Excellent.
January, early February.
Got
Yeah.
it. Excellent. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's been so fun talking to you, CJ. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Cool. So we did it. There was one little glitch, but it wasn't that bad, and I'll see if I can go hunt that down. But we did it. Thank you. This
Oh,
was
thank
fun.
you.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show and would love your support in any way by giving me comments below or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.